I still remember the day I met her. The air smelled like new beginnings, though I didn't know it at the time. I was 17, shy, carrying too many notebooks in my bag because writing was the only way I felt like I existed. People at school knew my name, but they didn't see me. Not really. Then there was Maya. She walked into the classroom like she belonged everywhere. She had this kind of glow, the kind that made people lean closer when she spoke, as if her words carried more weight than anyone else's. She laughed loudly, her hair catching the sunlight like it had been waiting for the moment. I sat in the corner, pretending to write, but secretly watching her, wishing just for a fraction of her confidence. She noticed me. That was the surprising part. During break, she walked over, leaned on my desk, and said, "You're always so quiet." "What do you write about?" No one had ever asked me that before. My voice trembled when I answered, "Stories. Mostly about people." "Then write about me," she said with a grin, as if she had just handed me a gift. And that was it. Our friendship began with her daring confidence colliding with my silence. From that moment, I was hers. Or maybe I should say, my loyalty was hers. She became the center of my days, and I didn't even question it. She had a way of making me feel important just by choosing me. Every morning she'd wave, "Come on, sit with me," and I would. At lunch, she pulled me into her circle of friends, introducing me as Anna, my writer. They laughed, they joked, but I was content just being by her side. Maya was like fire, warm when you stood close, but dangerous if you stayed too long. I didn't see the danger yet. I only saw the light. She told me secrets, or at least I thought they were secrets. Things about boys she liked, about fights with her mom, about dreams of traveling far away. I listened, always. I gave her my full attention, like a worshiper at an altar. And each time she leaned her head on my shoulder, each time she whispered, "You're the only one I can talk to," I felt chosen. Special. Necessary. Looking back, maybe that was the hook. Not her beauty or her laughter or even her confidence. It was the way she made me feel needed. But even then, small signs existed, tiny cracks in the perfect mirror of our friendship. I just didn't want to see them. Like the time she forgot my birthday. She came 2 days later, apologizing with a careless smile. "You know me, I'm terrible with dates," she said, handing me a half-eaten chocolate bar she had pulled from her bag. I laughed and told her it was fine, though inside, something wilted. Or the time I spent hours helping her study for an exam, quizzing her until midnight. The next day, she passed with flying colors and celebrated with other friends. She didn't even text me a thank you. But when she called that night, crying over a fight with her boyfriend, I rushed to her side without hesitation. Each time, I told myself it was nothing. That's what friends do. They forgive, they support, they show up. And I did. Always. There was one evening I'll never forget. We sat on the rooftop of her house, legs dangling over the edge, the city lights blinking below. She had stolen a bottle of cheap wine from her parents, and we were both tipsy, giggling at nothing. "Promise me," she said suddenly, turning serious, "that no matter what happens, you'll always be here for me." Her eyes, dark and earnest, pulled me in. I nodded without hesitation. "I promise." And I meant it. With all my heart, I meant it. What I didn't realize was that while I was making promises, she was only collecting them. That was the beginning. The first spark. A friendship that felt like sunlight after a long winter. I thought it would save me. I thought it would last forever. I didn't know then that I was slowly giving pieces of myself away. I didn't know that one day, I would look back and realize I had been nothing more than her shadow. Maya didn't knock when she started coming over. She would swing my door open with a hello, and every time, my room rearranged itself around her. My notebooks slid aside to make space for her elbows. My plans shifted to fit her timing. If I was mid-sentence in a story, I'd close the notebook, pin the sentence under my palm like a butterfly, and let it suffocate quietly while she sprawled on my bed and told me about her day. "We have to go out tonight," she'd say, using me like a ribbon tied around my wrist. "There's this rooftop place. Well, not a place. It's Max's cousin's building, but there'll be music." I always said yes. I learned the names of her friends the way you learn the names of constellations, because someone keeps pointing and telling you they matter. I listened to their dramas and started using their slang and laughed when they laughed, even when I wasn't sure why. In photos, I was the shadow beside Maya's flare, her hand thrown up, my smile careful but trying. At school, our bond looked like a triumph. Teachers softened around her brightness, and I basked in the reflected warmth. When group projects were assigned, we paired off automatically. She brainstormed big, noisy ideas. I drew the map and then quietly walked us through it. The day we presented, she dazzled, improv spinning through my carefully built structure, and we got an A. At the end, she hugged me from the side with a breathless, "Couldn't have done it without you," then ran off to celebrate with the louder half of the class. I waited by the door, gathering handouts and stray markers like a stagehand after the curtain has dropped, telling myself her words counted as credit. Maybe I didn't need applause. Maybe I preferred the clean, private satisfaction of work done well. When she cried, it was in pieces. A tear mid-laugh. A cracked voice halfway through a sentence. Her boyfriend, sometimes Ethan, sometimes just a situation, was a rotating storm. She would call at 11:47 p.m., and I would be in bed with a book light, and I would say, "I'm up, it's fine," even when it wasn't. I wrapped myself around her pain like a blanket and absorbed the cold that rose off it. I kept telling myself it was love, the friend kind, the right kind, the kind you prove by staying. It felt good to be the person who stayed. But staying has a cost. I paid it in small coins I barely counted. A skipped family dinner here, a rushed assignment there, a lie to my mother about why I had to be out late again. "We're studying," I said, and it wasn't exactly untrue. We were studying the complex weather of Maya's heart, and that exam never ended. One afternoon, I was supposed to take my mom to a checkup. Nothing serious, just a follow-up, but she hates hospitals, the smell, the waiting rooms, the cold-faced clocks. I had promised to go. Then Maya texted, "Emergency. Come now." No context, no question mark. I stared at the screen, feeling two worlds tug me in opposite directions. I told myself it would be quick, that I would stop by and then make it to the appointment in time. When I arrived, there was no emergency. There was a suitcase open on her bed and clothes spilling out, a flurry of half-decisions about a weekend trip she wanted to take with friends. "I freaked out," she said, a little laugh fluttering out as if to warm the air between us. "You know how I get. Help me pick. You have taste." I helped. I zipped the suitcase. I forgot, for 20 terrible minutes, the time. My phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "Are you coming?" The hurt in those 3 words went through me like a pin. I left Maya's house with a rushed apology and sprinted the 6 blocks home. We made it to the appointment, but only just. Mom was quiet in the car. I kept talking to fill the guilt, piling up sentences like pillows, soft and useless. That night, Maya posted a photo, her suitcase by the door, her feet pointed toward it like they were already on the road. Caption: "Ready for anything." She didn't tag me. Of course she didn't. I wasn't part of the story she wanted to tell. When I was around Maya, I started saying we instead of I. We loved this song. We hated that teacher. We were doing this, going there, choosing that. The I sounded selfish in my mouth, or worse, lonely. We felt safer. It placed me inside the world she carried like a parade around herself. Once, a flyer went up for a citywide writing competition. The prize was a tiny sum of money and a publication in a small journal, but to me it looked like a doorway cracked open. The deadline was the same weekend as Maya's big trip. "Submit now and schedule it," my English teacher said when I asked about timing. "Don't wait. Life gets loud." I smiled and promised I would. But life did get loud. The night before the deadline, Maya was in tears again. "He's ignoring me," she said, handing me her phone as if I could fix how many minutes he took between replies. We sat on my floor and built a text together like it was a fragile bridge back to his attention. When it finally went, and his typing dots appeared, she folded into me and laughed with relief, and my chest filled with a warmth that felt suspiciously like victory. It wasn't mine. By the time she left, it was late. My laptop hummed awake like a sleepy animal. I opened my draft and stared at it and heard Maya's voice still echoing in the room, and the story I had loved all week looked suddenly pale. I told myself I'd polish it in the morning, then slept in, then missed the cutoff by 40 minutes. Next year, I told myself as my stomach dropped. There's always next year. I punched the pillow twice like it was a drum, and the rhythm would steady me. I didn't tell Maya about the missed deadline. It felt like a secret I had to keep from her, not because she would mock me, she wouldn't, but because I knew the shape of the sympathy she would offer. You're so smart, you'll win bigger things. Deadlines are dumb anyway. Come out tonight, you'll feel better. I didn't want better in the shape of her night. Spring swept in with its confident wind. We were accepted to the same university, a logistical miracle she exclaimed about as if the universe had listened to her plans. Roommates, she declared, already texting, already designing the room in her mind, already ordering fairy lights. I nodded, my yes reflecting in her pupils. The decision lifted something inside me, leaving home, building a new life, and at the same time, it carried a tremor. If our friendship was a rhythm, it was hers that set the tempo. Did I really want to live inside that drumbeat? We started spending more time with her city friends, the ones who laughed from their throats and tossed their heads back and face-tuned their pictures into a collective glow. I learned to tilt my face to the best angle, to stand half behind Maya so her light would spill over me. At parties, I held her bag, her drink, her hair, her secrets. People began to greet me as Maya's friend. Sometimes they didn't add the second word. My father noticed before my mother did. Maybe because he sees the world like a steady ledger, costs and gains marked with pencil humility. He watched me leave and come home and leave again, and one night when I got in late, he was at the kitchen table with tea and leftover cake. "You look tired," he said, his voice not accusing, just true. "Are you happy?" "Yes," I said quickly. The wrong speed for a good answer. He stirred his tea. "Happiness is quiet sometimes," he said at last. "It doesn't always shout." What he didn't say, and neither do you, but you used to glow in a way that didn't need noise. I lay in bed afterward and considered the difference between loud and bright. I told myself I was both now. That Maya had taught me how to take up space. That my silence had been a smallness, and she was the hand that stretched me out. Exams arrived like a storm system. I studied alone and with Maya, though with often meant across from her while she scrolled, waiting for me to break the material into pieces she could swallow. I built worksheets for her and set timers for us and held up flashcards like a lighthouse. When grades came back, she whooped and hugged me, and the relief on her face was so bright it washed the tiredness from mine. She posted a story, a photo of our textbooks and a caption, "We did it." A tiny part of me wanted her to write, "Anna got me through." But that would have been asking. I didn't know how to ask. On the last day before break, our English teacher returned essays. "Strong, clear, thoughtful," he said to the class, with a few truly luminous pieces. He placed mine on my desk with a corner smile, and the word luminous circled at the top like a medal. I flushed, stupidly pleased, and looked sideways to tell Maya, only to find her not looking at me, already texting, already elsewhere. After class, she grabbed my arm. "Party tonight," she chirped. "Max's cousin, the roof again. You owe me, end of exams." The paper with luminous on it crinkled in my grip. I thought about going home, about sitting with the quiet of this small pride, about letting it soak in. "Please," she added, eyes shining with that expectation I so easily knelt to. "Okay," I said. Later, on the roof, music blurred into wind and laughter. Maya danced like a flag. I stood near the edge, feeling the city pull at me like it wanted to tell me something private. I reached into my pocket and touched the essay. The circle around luminous pressed into my fingertip. I imagined the circle widening into a window, then a door. I imagined stepping through it. "Earth to Anna," Maya called, half laughing, half impatient. "You're spacing out. Come back." I did. For now. I didn't know it then, but part 2 of our story, my story, wasn't about closeness. It was about the cost of staying close. It was about the first, quiet debts I signed in my own name. And it was about the small light I kept cupped in my hands, even as I stood in the brightness of hers, even as the wind on that roof pressed against my face and whispered that luminous doesn't need an audience to be real. Summer came, and with it, the heat that pressed against your skin like a hand you couldn't shake off. Maya thrived in it. She wore the kind of dresses that seemed made for sun, walked barefoot across lawns, laughed like the air belonged to her. I followed, as always. But something inside me had begun to shift. Maybe it was the word luminous still circling in my mind, glowing quietly at night when the house was asleep. Maybe it was the way my father's eyes lingered on me when I came home late, as if he was measuring what I'd lost against what I thought I had gained. The cracks were small at first. One evening we planned to study at my house. I cleaned my desk, laid out snacks, even printed notes for her. She texted half an hour late, "Sorry babe, can't. Going out with Max." I stared at the careful arrangement on my desk, the highlighters lined like soldiers, and felt something collapse. I didn't reply. The next day she breezed into class, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're not mad, right? You know how it is." I smiled. I always smiled. But my notebook stayed closed for the rest of the day. Another time I got sick. Not serious, just a fever that turned my limbs heavy. I stayed in bed, drifting between sweat and sleep. I texted her, "Not feeling well today." Hours passed. She didn't reply. By evening she posted a photo, her drink raised high, captioned "Best night ever." Surrounded by the same friends who always cheered the loudest. I watched the photo blur as my feverish eyes filled. I wasn't angry. I was empty. Like I had been holding a rope between us for so long, and she had simply let go without even noticing. When she finally texted the next morning, "You alive?" I typed yes and nothing more. But the real crack came one Friday. We had been planning for weeks to attend a small writing workshop in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered to me. I thought, for once, she was stepping into my world. She had promised to come. I printed both our tickets, packed us sandwiches, felt my chest buzz with excitement. The morning of, she called. Her voice was rushed, distracted. "Anna, I can't. Ethan's here, surprise visit. You get it, right? We'll go another time." Another time. The words sounded like dust. I opened my mouth, closed it, and finally said, "Sure." But when I hung up, I didn't go. I sat on my bed with the tickets crumpled in my fist, and I cried, not because she had chosen him, but because I had allowed myself to believe she wouldn't. That night, my mother came into my room. She didn't scold. She sat on the edge of the bed, smoothed my hair the way she hadn't done in years. "You've always given too much of yourself," she whispered. "One day, you'll see who deserves it." Her words ached, because deep down I already knew the answer. And still I stayed. I answered Maya's calls, I listened to her dramas, I nodded, I laughed. But a seed of doubt had rooted itself inside me. Every time she said "You're the best," I wondered if she meant "You're the most useful." The friendship that once felt like sunlight was beginning to scorch. And I realized, sometimes fire doesn't just warm. Sometimes it burns. The end didn't come with shouting. It came quietly, like the slow closing of a door you no longer wanted to hold open. It was late August, the air already cooling, the evenings stretching longer. We were at a cafe, the kind with chipped tables and music that hummed just low enough to make silence uncomfortable. Maya was scrolling on her phone while I stirred my coffee, the sugar dissolving into nothing. "Ethan's throwing a party this weekend," she said without looking up. "You'll come, right?" I hesitated. "I was thinking of visiting my grandmother. She asked me weeks ago." She cut me off with a sharp laugh. "God, Anna, you're always making excuses. No wonder you're stuck in this boring little routine." The words landed like stones. Something inside me cracked, not a sharp break but a slow, inevitable split that had been waiting for this exact moment. I set my spoon down. My voice was calm, steadier than I felt. "Do you even hear yourself? You've called me boring so many times, but who's the one always leaning on me when her life falls apart?" She looked up, eyebrows raised, half amused, half annoyed. "Wow. Drama much?" But I didn't back down this time. "No, Maya. I'm done. I've given, and you've only taken. I can't keep doing this." For the first time, she didn't know what to say. She blinked, then scoffed. Fine. Do whatever you want. If you want to throw away this friendship, that's on you. She picked up her phone again, as if that was the end of it. But I already knew it was. I walked home slowly, expecting the usual ache of regret to creep in. But it didn't. Instead, a strange lightness filled me, like I had been carrying something heavy for so long I had forgotten how it felt to stand without it. That night, I sat at my desk, pulled out a blank page, and began to write. The words came fast, like water finally breaking through a dam. For the first time in months, they belonged only to me, not to her moods, not to her crises, not to her shadow. Just me. In the silence of my room, I realized I wasn't empty without her. I was free. Weeks passed. She texted a few times, short, careless messages. Are you mad? Let's just move on. Come to the city, it's fun here. I didn't answer. Not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to give. I spent more time with my family. I read again. I submitted my story to another competition. And when the acceptance email came, small journal, modest prize, I smiled alone in my room, a real smile, one that didn't need anyone else's validation. One Saturday morning, I walked past the bus station. For years, I had stood there watching the buses leave, imagining myself on one, imagining escape. Now, for the first time, I wasn't watching, I was boarding. A bag over my shoulder, a notebook in my hand, a new city ahead. As the bus pulled away, the town grew smaller in the window, but inside me something grew larger. A sense of relief so steady, so deep, it felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. I whispered to myself, almost like a promise, never again will I shrink to fit someone else's shadow. Never again will I mistake being needed for being loved. And for the first time, I believed it.